What does history say about Bennedict Mathurin's future contractually and possibly with the Pacers? And what is something big you're missing about Mathurin? I'll tell you about all that. And when is the right time for the Pacers to trade for a center? This season and the offseason, we'll talk about all of it today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and Circle City Spin, and today I'm finally diving into a topic that I have kind of been asked about, and I've really wanted to tackle because everybody's missing a ton of big things, and it's my own personal research project, and it has a lot of cap geekery, and it all slams into one. Bennedict Mathurin, the trade deadline's less than a month away. He is obviously a big central figure for it, mostly because his contract's expiring, but also because of many other potential factors for the Pacers. What does history tell us about this situation? What is something big you're missing when it comes to Mathurin's future? Why does this all relate to the right time for the Pacers to trade for a center or their center of the future, whatever you want to call it? I have a lot to get into, and this was really inspired by a couple things. One is, there's a lot of stuff in here that I really wanted to research on my own about restricted free agents and guys who got traded in their third year after being first-round picks and things of that nature that you'll get to in a minute. But also because the team has won 3 games in a row, and a couple people honestly, have asked me, well, Mathurin's out. Do you see any correlation in this? Their offense looks really good. They're making shots. And yeah, guys are making shots. That's fine. But also, okay, so they are playing well without him right now, but they also were super hurt when he was playing, and their worst stretch of the season was also without him in early November when they couldn't score at all. So I don't have any real takes on them happening to win 3 games in a row right now and him not playing, especially because when he was playing, he was super hurt, multiple injuries, clearly. His on-offs are bad, but that's because right now they're playing really well, and when he was playing, they were not. Right? It's really hard to and this is kind of a frustrating thing for the Pacers. They don't have a lot of good data on his season, but it's really hard to assess things. I don't think it's even really fair to judge this stretch versus any other stretch if you want to go crazy. But I would say at the moment, I don't have any takes on his absence in the team playing well, but I do want to talk about something big you're missing with him. And related to that, something that happened in the offseason that was talked about a lot with him and what's happening with it now. And what I mean by that is, how many of you remember in the summer a talking point being, well, what's going to happen with these restricted free agents this summer? What should Mathurin learn from them? And those 4 were Josh Giddey, Quentin Grimes, Jonathan Kuminga, and Cam Thomas, who all had really long, drawn-out restricted free agencies. Ben Mathurin could be headed for that this summer. Actually, he certainly is headed for that this summer. Right? What's going to happen with them? What can Mathurin learn from it? And all those guys were in different situations. Let's check in on them. Okay, Josh Giddey. And I'm going to add a thing that I think is very important. Josh Giddey got traded early to the Bulls, a full year before his restricted free agency. He got a 4-year, $100 million contract. He fits his team well. He fits in their contract well. He's playing well. He was getting fringe all-star consideration before his injury. He's having a nice season, playing up to the level of that deal. Quentin Grimes with the Sixers. He got traded there late. This is actually very relevant to what we'll talk about today. He got traded there at the trade deadline a year ago and then got the qualifying offer after playing well. And he's playing decent this year. His per minute numbers are a little down, but he's playing less. He's probably playing a $15 million a year guy, $12 million a year guy, something like that. Maybe a little over that. He's playing fine, right? Jonathan Kuminga got a 2-year, $47 million contract and then played good for 2 seconds and then got hurt and then was bad and has played 10 minutes in a month and a half. Disaster. Clearly going to be traded at some point in the next week and a half, and I would suspect for almost nothing, very low value. Any chance the Warriors get a first-round pick is over. Probably less than that, okay? Cam Thomas is the hardest one to assess. He took the qualifying offer. He got hurt for a long time. His per-minute numbers are less. He's playing less. But there's no priority for either him or the team, and he got hurt, so who knows? What lesson can you take from that is that 2 of the 4 situations are clearly going poorly. That's Cam Thomas and Jonathan Kuminga. Quentin Grimes is still a big question. The team that probably can pay him the most this summer is Philly, but did they want him? They didn't offer him a lot last summer. Is his production enough to get a bunch of money? Did he lose any money? Who knows what he even got offered? That's still a question mark. Giddey's going great, but the reason you raise your eyebrows is the two guys who got traded are probably in the best spot. Does that mean Ben Mathurin is in the wrong spot? No, but that's certainly telling for a project that all summer everybody was saying, hey, Ben Mathurin, let's compare this situation to his, right? And that's how that's going so far for the ones that drug out for various reasons. And related, let's bring up another pacer, Obi Toppin, to talk about Josh Giddey for a sec, because what I would say with Giddey is the guy who got to the right spot earlier got paid the most, and it's worked out the best for him. That also worked out for Obi Toppin, who got traded to the Pacers, granted on different terms, from the Knicks, better fit, plays well, gets $60 million, and fits very well on that team. The guy who got traded the latest, Quentin Grimes, not so great. The guys who stuck with their team, not so great. And that is all part one to think about, is if the clear short and long-term future aren't aligned. I'm not saying that's the case for Mathurin, but that was, again, we were all comparing it all offseason, including me. Let's check in on those now. So the other thing I wanted to check in on is the other side of that, Quentin Grimes' side of this. He got traded last year ahead of the trade deadline. And Mathurin, if he is an expiring contract, that is why I believe him to be a central figure for the Pacers at this deadline. The other thing I wanted to look at is guys who since 2019, I'll explain why I picked that in a second, but guys who since 2019 were in their third year in the NBA and on their rookie scale contract and got traded that season. And for what? So that is Ben Mathurin's current situation. He's in his third NBA season. He's on the team that drafted him. What does history say about guys who get traded in that reality? Like Grimes last year, who got traded for Cody Martin and a second-round pick. So the reason I picked since 2019 is, this is a little fuzzy, but those would be guys who have been traded since the new CBA was kind of known in rule, right? If you were a 2018 first rounder and you got traded in 2022, people knew the CBA was going to expire, but nobody really knew, maybe at least publicly, what it was going to be like, what the rules were going to be. There were at least some hints of it at the 2023 trade deadline, and obviously it was enacted in 24 and 25. And so those are the most relevant current rules and constraints of the NBA as it relates to this, right? So Grimes, it was obviously no other thing, like I just said. Bad trade for the Mavs. They got Cody Martin in a second, obviously, but he also got traded by the Pistons for like Tim Hardaway and the Knicks for even less, right? So he got traded a lot, and the value was never super high. So let's run through all these guys. Quentin Grimes is a fine player, by the way. He's a decent player. I think Mathurin might be a little better, but Grimes is a decent player. Davion Mitchell, also a decent player. He got 4 years and some odd amount of money that was not like halfway decent. He got traded from the Raptors to the Heat for PJ Tucker, a second-round pick, and cash. Not very much. Kyra Lewis, you might remember this trade. He got traded to the Pacers from the Pelicans and then immediately flipped for Pascal Siakam as salary, literally cap relief. The Pelicans just said, take him. We want to get out of the tax. Nothing. I mean, something got exchanged, but the reason was cap relief. Precious Achiuwa was traded in this scenario, but not traded away per se. He was a piece in the OG Anunoby trade. Register that one. You'll see why in a minute. Malachi Flynn was in some random little upgrading moves. Not a centerpiece of his trades. An interesting one to note, a really good player who is still on the team that traded, not really good player, a pretty good player who ironically I'm lower on than like basically everybody, but he's good. He's clearly a starting level player. Rui Hachimura got traded in the middle of his third season from the Wizards to the Lakers for Kendrick Nunn and 3 second-rounders. A good player who got paid that summer, did not net first-round pick value. Matisse Thybulle, after making 2 all-defense teams with the team that drafted him in Philly, got traded in a part of a 4-team trade. The highlight of that trade was Josh Hart going to the Knicks. He got traded for Jalen, not Jaden, Jalen McDaniels and 2 second-round picks. And Darius Baisley was as part of a salary dump. Dario Saric and a second-round pick went to the Thunder. There might be more. I think that's all of them that fit the specific criteria I was looking for. Did you hear a single first-round pick exchanged in there? No. And I think the reason for that is if somebody is good enough to have first-round value, it's rare that their team that they're on would be like, yes, we want to trade them away, right? That's not a common thing that history says, and that's relevant for Ben Mathurin. What has happened is they've either been dumped for interesting stuff, right? Hachimura for 3 seconds and Kendrick Nunn isn't nothing. Grimes was for like a good, Caleb Martin's decent player, and it's in a pick, right? But nothing huge. The interesting one in there to me was Precious Achiuwa being traded in an upgrade for OG Anunoby, and Kyra Lewis being part of a trade for an upgrade in Pascal Siakam, and Matisse Thybulle this one's different, but being part of a trade for an upgrade in Josh Hart, even though it was a 4-team trade and he went somewhere else, right? That is potentially more feasible to me, but the straight up trading them away part has very rarely, yielded high results. Okay, so maybe his value wouldn't be super high. He'd be trending towards restricted free agency. He'd be paid more money, but that also means the Pacers could just keep him. He's good. Well, the other thing people always want to say when you talk about Ben Mathurin is just sign and trade him. Do it in the summer. Well, let's talk about that, because history of that also not particularly smooth, and you're all missing something huge when it comes to Ben Mathurin sign and trades, a rule that you need to know about. That's all coming up here on Locked On Pacers. But before we get into any of that, let me first talk to you guys about FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season. FanDuel's making them even better. Every Friday night before the game tips off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new. Boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect right before the games, right before the weekend starts. It adds extra energy to your Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Also need to quickly talk to you guys about Wayfair. The new year's here. It's the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you are spending more time at home, you might as well love how it looks and feels. That's why you should turn to Wayfair. It's a one-stop shop for getting your home back on track, from bedding to mattresses to storage solutions for every room. Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. They have everything you need for a full home refresh all in one place. Whether you're updating your living room, organizing your space, or upgrading your work from home setup, Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for your style and budget. You can pick up new bedding accent pillows. It'll change how your bedroom feels. You can find pieces that match your style. Shopping is easy. Delivery is smooth. Everything arrives exactly as expected. It's made getting back into routine much more manageable for many people this year. So get organized, refreshed, and back on track for way less. Head to Wayfair.com right now. Shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Make your second listen. Not a ton of crazy games last night, but Kobe Buffkin is on the Lakers, who are playing kind of poorly, and they played Kobe Buffkin's old team. So Locked On Lakers could be your second listen. They won just before I started recording. Okay, I'm going to add a caveat, by the way. I'm saying none of this to say that I am comparing any of the players named to Ben Mathurin. I'm only comparing them contractually, not as talents. And also, I'm not even saying all this to say I would trade Ben Mathurin. I'm just want to provide history of a player that's going to, I think, be, again, the most discussed player for the Pacers ahead of the trade deadline. So let's talk about the other thing people always want to say. Well, Tony, they could just sign and trade him in the summer. How great is that? Then he could be traded at a higher salary number. Okay, maybe, but you're kind of missing something. We'll get there in a second. Let me also talk about sign and trades of restricted free agents. Not a lot. It's a rare thing for a rule that we're going to get into in a second, but let's talk about those. Let's see if those have extracted big value for the teams that have done it. This is also pretty rare. Okay, Grant Williams, a player that I loved in his draft, by the way. Decent player. He got signed and traded from the Celtics to the Mavs. He was in the rotation for a Boston team that was punching up to the finals. He got traded to the Mavs for 2 second-round picks and some swaps. Second-round swaps, to be clear. Not a lot. Not anything. Right? Nothing. Lonzo Ball, at the time a good player, from the Pelicans to the Bulls. The Bulls surged. They were the number one seed, and he's playing. Lonzo's still good. Has that sheen of a very high draft pick. He got traded from the Pelicans to the Bulls via sign and trade as a restricted free agent for Garrett Temple, Tomas Satoransky, and a second-round pick. Lauri Markkanen, perhaps the exception. His trade, the Hachimura is pretty good, I guess. His trade will, of course, be one that everybody circles, right? The upgrade trades I talked about with other guys will be one. Lauri Markkanen from the Bulls to the Cavs. Yes, that's a real thing in Lauri Markkanen's career. He got traded for Derrick Jones Jr., who was not thought of highly at the time, but is now a good player, a first-round pick and a second-round pick. All right. Look at that. That's actually good value. And Markkanen was not this level of player that he is now at the time. That one is something that if you're the highest on Mathurin, you'd say that's the value that he's worth. I would not say he's worth that much, but that is the only example that in the current realm of time, and that was actually pre the known CBA right now. That was 2021. Lonzo was also pre the known CBA. Grant Williams also, I think that one might have been close. I think Grant Williams was in this realm, right? There have obviously been guys signed and then traded later. Kuminga might fall into that situation in the next couple of weeks. Jalen Green, everybody's going to bring up. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking strictly about you are signed and traded that is in the same transaction. I'm also not talking about anybody picked in the second round, although they could qualify, like Malcolm Brogdon to the Pacers is an example of that. But those are different. They're subject not to different rules per se, but it's just a little different situation and time of their career compared to what I'm talking about. Regardless, marketing good value, Grant Williams, value, Lonzo, kind of nothing really. So what I came out of this thinking was like, man, all those are kind of underwhelming. But again, the reason you'd consider moving a guy that you drafted that early in their career, if they're so amazing, you're not even considering it, right? So it's kind of pointing both directions of like, wow, they're trading a young player. Surely you'd think they'd get more, especially if that young player is kind of decent, like Rui Hachimura, like Matisse Thybulle was thought to be at the time, like Quentin Grimes, like Grant Williams, like Lonzo Ball, or like Larry Markkinen. But you see one first-round pick moved in every trade I just named. It's pretty rare, right? So that's thing one to say. Thing two to say is the thing that I think everybody keeps missing when they say, oh my gosh, they could just sign and trade Ben Mathurin and stack his contract with name a random Pacers player and they could get awesome guy in the summer who makes a lot of money. No, they can't. That's not how that works. There's a rule preventing exactly that. So let me tell you, it's called base year compensation. The reason it exists is, let's say, I'm trying to think of a player. James Johnson, for example, he would have had full bird rights with the Pacers. He was with the team for several years. What if the Pacers gave James Johnson $40 million to trade him for an all-star, right? Like, that's a ridiculous contract. The point of base year compensation is to prevent a player going from making an extremely low amount of money to an extremely high amount of money, and that returning a player making a high amount of money. It should be a fairly traded contract. That contract should be reflective of the value of the player. And so there's a rule called base year compensation. If a player being signed and traded gets more than a 20% raise, so for Mathurin, that'd be a little under $12 million a year for his first year of his next deal, and the team signing him does not have cap space. The Pacers, as the team signing him via sign and trade, would not. It does not matter what the team he's going to. They would be subject to a rule called base year compensation. So check for Mathurin. I assume his first year salary is going to be in the $12 million plus range. So what that means is, in a trade, Ben Mathurin's outgoing salary, as it concerns the Pacers, right? So the amount of money that Mathurin would count for outgoing in a trade would be the bigger number of either his current salary, like in year 4 with the Pacers right now, which is $9.2 million, or 50% of his new salary, whichever is bigger. So if his new salary is not over $20 million, or over $18 million, I should say, his current salary would be his outgoing salary number. If he makes $18 million, his outgoing number in trades for the Pacers, the number that they're salary matching at is only $9.2 million. If his salary is $25 million in the first year, which I would not expect it to be, but if it is, he would count as $12.5 million going out in a trade. I'll use $25 million because Kuminga got basically that. He got 23.5 or whatever, right? So if he got $25 million a year, or $25 million in the first year of his new deal, Ben Mathurin did, he would count as $12.5 million of outgoing salary. With a 40% salary match rule, the new rules, they could take in a player making $17.5 million, not $25 million, right? Way less than $25 million. However, the other part of this is the team getting Ben Mathurin, his incoming salary to them would count as his actual salary. Base year compensation is very, very, very confusing. That's why when you saw those trades, Grant Williams, there was no other players involved. I think he went into either a trade exception or something for the Mavs, right? Lonzo Ball went for some low salary guys because the Bulls, I think, had cap space or something, right? Like, it's very rare. And the market and trade was a 4-team trade. The Nuggets were involved. The Blazers were involved, right? Like, it's a lot of moving parts to actually do that. And you can't just sign them for a bunch of money. and then immediately get a player back. If you want to do that, you have to do what's going on with Kuminga and wait into the season, and then things get more awkward and perhaps their value goes down. Or it's a Jalen Green situation where you wait a full year and trade them at a higher number. But that was I think people have looked at that as some super obvious and easy path, and I don't think it is. That has happened once, and I'm going to put on the record that I think that's going to be a dumb trade for the Suns. Regardless, yes, that did happen. Maybe that's the move. I don't think Mathurin's worth $33 million a year. And then we'll see. That is perhaps the rosiest outlook of this. All of this information is to say, look, maybe this, my hope is that this gives you all the context you need to properly contextualize what Ben Mathurin's trade value should be. It should not change your perception of him. It should not change what you think the Pacers should do with him, because let's be clear. I said this at the top of the segment. Ben Mathurin is good. Ben Mathurin is a good basketball player. The 2 games he had to start the season were just like holy crap level stuff. You cannot do that if you are not legitimately a very good player. What I'm saying today is not to say, oh my gosh, his trade value might be nothing. Like it's something, right? Oh my gosh, they're screwed. They can't trade him for a high salary in the summer, whatever. I'm not saying that either. I am saying that the history of guys in his situations, the trade return is not so overwhelming, but if the player's in a position where a team is considering trading them, there's usually a reason for that. And so that is all important context to consider with him. And now I would like to get to the reason I have presented all this information to you, because this is the other question that I think the Pacers are asking themselves. When's the right time to trade for a center? The center. They need a starting level center. Jay Huff plays well sometimes. Michael Potter's a good player sometimes. Isaiah Jackson's a fine player. They're all bench players. They are all bench players. I think that's been clearly established. They need a better center. When Tyrese Haliburton is playing to start next season, they need a center. When is the right time to do that? Is it now? Is it in the summer? What are the pros and cons of those things? Is it in the draft? I don't think so. Let me talk about that to close out today's Locked On Pacers. But first, everybody, let me tell you about Zocdoc. Finding a doctor you actually like can feel like discovering a diamond in the rough. You want someone in-network nearby with availability, but you also want a doctor who listens and makes you feel comfortable and explains things clearly and helps you walk out feeling confident about your next steps. Your diamond in the rough doctor exists, and finding them is easy with Zocdoc, a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can choose someone you truly connect with. You can search for specialty or symptoms, in-person or video visits, make scheduling super easy. Verified patient reviews help you get a sense of the doctor's vibe and communication style. They have real-time availability. Appointments usually happen within 24 to 72 hours, but if needed, book care fast. The first place you should go is Zocdoc to make the process simple. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments. Go to Zocdoc.com/LockedOnNBA and find and instantly book a doctor you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA, Zocdoc.com/LockedOnNBA. Thank you to Zocdoc for sponsoring this message. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, let's see, some fun-ish games last night. Jamal Murray was cooking again as the Nuggets beat the Pelicans, meaning the Pacers and Pelicans still competing to see who will be the last team to win 10 games this season. The Kings just made it there, and the Pacers play the Pelicans later this week. So Locked On Pelicans for your second listen today. So obviously the center discussion is more nuanced than the things I'm about to throw at you. It depends on who the player they're getting is. What's their salary? What's their timeline? How old are they? What would it take to get them? I am just simply talking about the pros and cons of certain types of moves and timings here. I will make my own opinion, I suppose, in this, but it's hard to have an opinion without knowing who the player is. Like there are certain players, for example, a lot of chatter about Jaren Jackson because of the John Morant stuff, right? Jaren Jackson's salary right now is like $35 million, and then he has a huge extension start next year. The same is true for Bam Adebayo, right? So for them, obviously the time to trade for them is this season, right now, right? Because in the summer it becomes way more prohibitive to do so given the Pacers salary structure, right? And it'd be hard to fit those guys in anyway without the Pacers going into apron land, that's a different conversation. But regardless, like those guys specifically, you would trade for them now, this year, like in the next 3 weeks is the Pacers. But there's some other guys where trading for them in the summer might make more sense because they'll be more available or their value might be lower because the team that they're on has a financial crunch and needs to open up an exception or something, right? You just never know. So there is a lot of context in what I'm about to say, and that none of these are hard and fast thoughts. But the considerations for the Pacers are as follows. right? Right now, their salary structure is somewhat flexible, and it's not going to change that much in the summer. The reason that's the case is I just did all this Mathurin stuff. After the trade deadline, you can't trade Ben Mathurin this year, even around the draft. Once you're an expiring contract, you cannot be traded until the new league year starts. So the guys that you'd consider like in the lump of salary that could be sent out for the Pacers for their center, I'll let you make up the names. Like, I'm not going to say who I think is or isn't potentially a part of this, but everybody who makes less than Siakam, Nembhard, Toppin, Nesmith, McConnell, Mathurin, Jackson, Walker, Shepard, Huff, for a few, all of them, everybody with the exception of Mathurin, their salary is really close this year and next year, right? So the salary packages that exists for the Pacers now and at the start of the next league year are pretty similar. Ben Mathurin notwithstanding, he is the difference, right? So the pro, air quotes, of doing a trade now is, if you're the Pacers and you don't feel like Ben Mathurin's in your future, I'm not saying he is or isn't, I'm just saying this is a consideration. If you don't feel like he is, there is value in trying to include him in that trade now, because you won't have that salary or that asset. He is a positive value asset for sure in the summer. I just went through the challenges of a sign and trade. It is possible to do one, as Grant Williams, Larry Markin, and Alonzo Ball proved, but it's not very easy. It's even harder now in the new apron environment, right? So a reason you'd consider it now as the Pacers is that, exactly. You have the salaries now. You know the values of these guys now. What if a year from now we're doing the same conversations about Jarris Walker? If he hasn't gotten any better, right, what's his trade value? I mean, you assume everybody gets better all the time, but that's not how it works, right? I'm not even saying I think that's going to be the case, just if, right? And then you can't trade Mathurin, and Walker's value is not that high. You just don't have as much very movable salary to get that guy at different times. Walker's salary is one of the ones that jumps actually the most between this season and next, and it only goes up like $1.8 million. Isaiah Jackson's actually goes down, though. So there's a lot of little tiny things that are all important considerations for the Pacers in this. So they have more little movable salaries right now. But in the summer, they have a mid-level exception now, but they're too close to the tax line to functionally use all of it. And there's no free agent now. There actually are free agents in the summer. So that's part of this too, is there's real player movement. And that's not even just relevant for the Pacers using their mid-level to sign a center. I'm not even talking about the free agent market. If another team wants one of these free agent centers and they could trade their center to the Pacers first and then sign them, that's also a consideration, right? The movement of the offseason opens up a lot more possibilities. There's also the draft. And I don't know anything about any of the centers in this draft. I've watched one game of all the top guys, of the top three guys. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the draft right now. I don't know anything about the top centers draft. I will tell you this. This year is proving me a little wrong, but I usually am of the opinion that rookies are bad. They're first year in the league. They're just bad players. They're not winners. And if you're the Pacers and you have whatever your goals are, win 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds next year, however many, a rookie center starting for your team is not going to do that. They might be able to help you somewhat, but not at that level. The draft is not the answer. The answer is either if there is a free agent, I guess I should just pull it up. If there's a free agent that they believe to be starting quality that they can get, that is obviously the ideal route, because you don't have to give up any assets to get a free agent on your team, right? Now, that's not hard and fast, but that's helpful to know. And you can use your mid-level in trades now too. So that's part of this, is that if that is the route they want to go, that's the easiest in terms of the things you have on your team. Some available, for example, centers this summer. Isaiah Hartenstein, certainly starting quality. Nikola Vucevic, at the back end of that, he makes shots. He's not the greatest at a lot of other stuff. Yusuf Nurkic, also at the back end of that. And then Mitchell Robinson, he's pretty good. Everybody else I would say on this list, Zach Collins, Robert Williams, Mo Wagner, Brook Lopez, Ayton Looney, Darren Sharp's approaching starter quality, but these are all like lower end starters. Al Horford, Drummond, Nick Richards, these are the unrestricted guys. How many of them truly could be the answer? And how many of them, by the way, would take the MLE? Hartenstein would probably take more than that. He's a team option. Who even knows if he's available? The only sweet spot there is Mitchell Robinson, who's good, and he started all the time. If they're going to trade, the difference is they have more they have more movable salaries now than they will in the summer, but they could trade more picks in the summer if they are interested in trading their current year pick. That's also a possibility. I'm not saying they should or shouldn't do that. I don't know who the player they're trading for is. Regardless, there are pros and cons to both. I think that now is tricky solely because do you want them to play this season? Is that actually something the Pacers should want? If they keep playing well, so I keep saying there's value in these guys playing. Now they can learn. They can pair them with other players, see what works and what doesn't, what this player needs to work on. If that's going to happen this season, that's important to know. You can get this guy in your system. You can pair them with certain other guys who are not Tyrese Haliburton, see what they're good at. I would think if the Pacers can get the right guy, that would be the time. This year would be the time to do it. And then you have the full offseason, the full summer. They're already on your team. That's all great, right? That's super helpful to know. And they have the stuff to do that. But they'll have more non-player movement options because of free agency in the summer and more draft trade options in a way that I think more players will be available to them in the summer. But I think the best time to actually acquire the player, given the moving salary part of this, is now, is this season. So those are competing goals. Perhaps more players or better players available in a few months. Who knows if there are better players available? You never know who's going to be available in the NBA. So that's a guess. If they believe, based on their intel and research, the Pacers front office, that more or better players will be available in the summer, they should wait till the summer. If they don't, they should use the resources they have now because those resources will not be so much different from a salary perspective in the summer. And Tony East Cap Geekery for 32 minutes. Thank you for listening to all of this today. I had a lot to talk about and a lot that I learned myself by going back through all these trades. You can find me on social media at Tony R. East and this podcast at Locked On Pacers. Those are great places to yell at me if you think I said something dumb today. Back tomorrow talking Pacers Raptors. Can the Pacers win 4 in a row? We will see. Thank you all so much for listening today. Have a wonderful rest of the day. We will see you very soon.